But first, let's head over to today's Art Talk. Hello, Sarah.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Art Talk number 120. We're getting up there, guys. We've been doing this for a while. I love it. I do want to make a disclaimer that this presentation has some mature language and mature themes. So just so everyone knows ahead of time. So today's artist is Jacqueline Fahey. Fahey was born in Timaru on the South Island of New Zealand in 1929. She had lots of strong female role models in her life. Her mother was a pianist who attended the Melbourne Conservatory of Music and worked as a professional pianist for 8 years before returning to New Zealand. And her grandmother taught at a Dominican convent and was very good at languages and loved history. And Fahey has said, quote, "These two women were my role models, really. They gave me the idea that women were supposed to excel, even if it was primarily in the arts." Jacqueline studied at the Canterbury University College of Art, graduating with a Diploma of Fine Arts in 1952. And while at university, she also met and befriended Rita Angus, Doris Lusk, and Juliet Peter, other famous female New Zealand artists. And though she wasn't influenced stylistically by these artists, she was inspired by their commitment to painting and to the seriousness with which they undertook their work. She's commented, quote, "It wasn't so much that they influenced the way I painted. What they did was allow me to be professional, to think of it as my life." So here we have her painting The Birthday Party, and this piece might look familiar because it was highlighted in the Art Talk celebrating SMA's 40th anniversary. Painted in 1974, this piece portrays a woman caught in a moment of quiet self-reflection. She sits alone at a table strewn with the remains of the day's festivities. And this piece was picked out specifically by Liz Stillman because she herself has felt like the woman at the table, taking a moment to reflect on the celebrations of the day before cleaning it all up. Fahey challenges preconceptions of what is worthy of our attention. Instead of painting a moment in the midst of the birthday celebration, she focuses on a quieter moment of the day. So she allows us to see new things because she gives us a new vantage point. Mm-hmm. In 1971, when this piece was painted, Fahey was just starting to become a more recognized artist. She was named as one of the new batch of icons announced by the New Zealand Arts Foundation. And Fahey's husband was a noted psychiatrist, Fraser MacDonald. He held positions at a number of institutions throughout New Zealand, and they raised their 3 daughters in a series of houses on hospital grounds. In Porirua, the gardens were overseen by a patient, Mr. Quickly, also known as Speedy, who had studied at Kew Gardens in England and worked on a royal estate. So he supplied the family with a steady supply of produce and fresh flowers. And Fahey actually recalled that she could cope with the flowers, but the fruit and vegetables, which he obviously expected her to turn into preserves, frustrated her because they kind of showed her shortcomings as a quote unquote proper doctor's wife. But when the family moved to Kingseat Hospital near Auckland, Mr. Quickly came with them. So this painting is really a study in warm autumnal colors and dappled in shadows. And it celebrates what Fahey described as the light he brought into all our lives. To mark 125 years of women's suffrage in New Zealand, the Hawken collections at the University of Otago presented Sisters Communing, which was an exhibition drawing connections between women's arts and a range of the Hawkins archival collections related to women gaining the vote. So borrowing its title from one of the Hawkins' most treasured artworks by Fahey, Sisters Communing celebrates the artistic, domestic, and social and political lives of New Zealand women. And in 2007, actually, this piece was also included in an exhibition in Los Angeles called WAC, Art and the Feminist Revolution at the Museum of Contemporary Art. As mentioned, Fahey often focused on the domestic life and relationships of women, including herself. Her unrestrained and uncensored portrayal of middle-class family life included fighting and drinking, both of which are shown here in this 1977 painting. And domestic life, which had been dismissed as trivial, was really an important source material for feminist artists. Fahey had children on the younger side and in close succession of one another, and her career was put on pause for a period of time. But motherhood and family life was a key source of artistic inspiration. So speaking of uncensored family life, here is her 1979 piece called My Skirt's in Your Fucking Room. And this really made me giggle because while I don't have a sister that I shared clothes with, I was in a sorority in college, and there were always girls sharing clothes, and inevitably pieces would go mysteriously missing. But what I love about the work is the really expressive facial features that she paints. We can clearly imagine the conversation that's going on between these two women. The woman with the dark hair comes out and says, "My skirt's in your fucking room." And the blonde woman replies with, "Oh, I was just borrowing it. I was going to give it back," or something along those lines. But I've seen many conversations play out like this, and I just think it's such a great, very realistic moment in time to paint. So there's not a ton of information on this particular piece, but what we can say is that it's another piece highlighting the special bond that women share. Fahey was living in New York at the time that she painted this, so Augusta and Lucy taking up the theater, maybe it could be a reference to Broadway and the theater scene in New York. But what we do know is that Augusta was her daughter, one of her daughters, and Lucy is her friend. So we can see two young women bonding and celebrating each other's company. This piece is a depiction of Fahey's youngest daughter, Emily, and her elderly mother, Margaret. And here we have the two of them drawing together, and it's quite a busy scene. We have a lot of different patterns going on. For example, the carpet. And we've actually seen this carpet before in Mother and Daughter Quarreling. There it is again. And then there's this motif of this bright yellow throughout the piece, in the lunchbox, the flowers, and Emily's shirt. And the many birds of this painting are actually not symbolic, but they're literal. At the time, Fahey had taxidermied birds on loan to assist with imagery to feature in her large anti-war painting, The Hill of Bitteries, completed in 1982. So they were, in fact, placed throughout their living room. But overall in this piece, grandmother and granddaughter, young and old, kind of bookend the trajectory of female life. So this is quite a visceral piece, with the title and imagery conveying frustration at violence and violence against women. Fahey painted this when she was 74 years old and has both the wisdom of someone who has lived a life and also the anxious frustration of an aging activist, if they've done enough in their lives. And this piece is filled with lots of black contrasted with the bright yellow and red and orange. And that gives the painting kind of a fiery darkness. The woman with the red paintbrush down in this corner is actually supposed to be Fahey herself. And the red paint still on her brush suggests the immediacy of this piece. And it's also a commentary on urban life. In the background, we can see a mother and child on their way to the grocery store with their heads down, kind of unaware of the vicious attack that plays out before them. So one thing is certain, though, of this piece, and Fahey said it of herself, quote, "If you have nothing to say, don't paint." And finally, we'll finish with Encounter with the Past. In this painting, Fahey utilizes the verb go to emphasize motion and progress in an urban context. So we have this winding path that leads the viewer through a kind of disordered scene, comprising a set of jumbled and disconnected figures, none really meeting the other's gaze. So the title of this work implies an internal snapshot of Fahey's own life path. And kind of by intertwining a personal narrative with a scene of apparent urban chaos, she reinforces her role as the architect and central figure in her works. Rather than claiming to speak for others, Fahey candidly expresses her own experiences and her own insights. Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed Jacqueline Fahey's work, and I'll see you next week.
Right. Thank you so much, Sarah. Jacqueline was an amazing artist.